In a certain city of China, during times of yore, there lived a hunchbacked man whose presence brought joy to everyone who encountered him, despite his physical deformity, or perhaps because of the way he had learned to find humor in life's challenges. This remarkable man had become the most beloved entertainer in all the city. His name was Abu Hassan, though everyone simply called him the Hunchback, and he possessed a gift for storytelling, singing, and comedy that could make even the most melancholy soul burst into laughter. His jokes were clever without being cruel, his songs were beautiful without being pretentious, and his stories were engaging without being lengthy. Children would clap their hands when they saw him coming down the street. Merchants would pause in their bargaining to listen to his tales, and even the city guards would smile and wave when he passed by on his rounds. The Hunchback made his living by performing at weddings, festivals, and private gatherings, but his true joy came from the spontaneous performances he would give in the marketplace or at street corners, simply for the pleasure of seeing people's faces light up with laughter. He was known for his kindness as well as his humor, often using his earnings to help families in need, and never refusing to perform for those who could not afford to pay him. On this particular evening, as the muezzin's call echoed across the city and the sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and rose, the Hunchback was making his way home after a successful day of performances. His pouch jingled with the coins he had earned, and his heart was light with the memory of the laughter and applause he had inspired. As he passed through the cloth merchant's quarter, he encountered a tailor named Mustafa and his wife Khadija, who were just closing their shop for the day. The couple had seen the Hunchback perform many times and had always admired his cheerful spirit and entertaining skills.
"Peace be upon you, Abu Hassan,"
called Mustafa warmly.
"We have just finished preparing our evening meal, and we would be honored if you would join us. My wife has made her famous lamb stew, and we could use some of your wonderful stories to season the food with laughter."
The Hunchback's face lit up with genuine pleasure at this invitation. Though he was welcomed in many homes throughout the city, he never tired of the simple joy of sharing a meal with kind people.
"The pleasure would be mine, my friends,"
he replied with a gracious bow.
"Good food is made even better by good company, and I have many new stories that are eager to find appreciative ears."
Khadija bustled about their modest home, setting out the best dishes and utensils they owned, while Mustafa and the Hunchback settled themselves on cushions around the low table. The aroma of the lamb stew filled the air, fragrant with cardamom, cinnamon, and other exotic spices that made their mouths water in anticipation. As they began to eat, the Hunchback entertained his hosts with a series of amusing anecdotes about the characters he had encountered during his performances that day. He told of the pompous merchant who had demanded that all his jokes be about his competitors, the nervous bride who had worried that laughter at her wedding would be inappropriate, and the group of children who had tried to pay him with buttons and pretty stones because they had no coins. His imitations of these various characters were so accurate and hilarious that Mustafa and Khadija found themselves laughing until tears ran down their cheeks. The Hunchback had a remarkable ability to capture not just people's voices and mannerisms, but also the essence of their personalities, making his audience feel as if they had been present for the original encounters.
"Truly, Abu Hassan,"
gasped Khadija between fits of laughter.
"Allah has blessed you with a gift that brings joy to everyone around you. How fortunate we are to have such entertainment with our dinner."
The Hunchback beamed with pleasure at this compliment, for he took genuine pride in his ability to brighten people's lives.
"My dear friends,"
he replied,
"the gift is yours as much as mine. A performer without an audience is merely a man talking to himself, but an audience like yourselves makes even simple stories seem like magic."
As the evening progressed and they finished their meal, Mustafa brought out a platter of fried fish he had purchased from the market. The Hunchback launched into one of his most popular routines, an elaborate tale about a conversation between a camel and a donkey who were arguing about which of them was more essential to human civilization. He was in the middle of describing the camel's haughty declarations about the nobility of carrying merchant caravans across the desert when Khadija, caught up in the merriment, took a large piece of fish and playfully stuffed it into his mouth, stopping his speech with her hand and laughing.
By Allah, you must swallow it whole. I will not give you time to chew.
But the morsel contained a stiff bone which lodged in his gullet, and suddenly he began to choke. Mustafa and Khadija watched with growing alarm as their guest's face turned red, then purple, as he struggled to dislodge whatever was blocking his throat. They leaped up and tried to help, patting his back, offering him water, attempting various remedies they had heard might help a choking person. But despite their efforts, the hunchback's struggles grew weaker and weaker until finally he slumped forward onto the table, completely still and silent. His face had turned a terrible blue color, and no amount of calling his name or shaking his shoulders could rouse him.
By Allah,
Whispered Mustafa in horror.
I think he is dead. The poor man has choked to death. At our table.
The realization of what had happened struck them both like a physical blow, and they stared at their beloved friend's motionless form in shocked disbelief. Khadija began to weep, covering her face with her hands.
This is a disaster beyond imagining. Abu Hassan was loved by everyone in the city. When people learn that he died in our home, they will say we are cursed, or worse, they may even suspect that we poisoned him.
Mustafa's practical mind began to work through the implications of their situation.
You are right, wife. Even though we are completely innocent of any wrongdoing, people will always wonder about the circumstances of his death. Our business will be ruined, our reputation destroyed. We must think of some way to handle this situation that will not bring suspicion upon us.
As they sat in stunned silence, each trying to think of a solution to their terrible predicament, Mustafa suddenly snapped his fingers.
I have an idea. You know, our neighbor, the Jewish doctor who lives 3 houses down, he is always boasting about his medical knowledge and his ability to cure any ailment. Perhaps if we take Abu Hassan to him, claiming that our friend has suddenly fallen ill, the doctor will be blamed if he fails to save him.
Khadija looked at her husband with a mixture of admiration and horror.
But that would be dishonest. We would be deceiving an innocent man.
Would it be more honest to let our own family suffer for something that was clearly an accident?
Mustafa replied.
Besides, we are not really lying, we are simply not mentioning that Abu Hassan is already beyond help. The doctor will discover that for himself soon enough.
After much debate and soul-searching, the couple decided that they had no choice but to attempt this deception. They carefully lifted the hunchback's body and wrapped him in a cloak. As they carried him through the dark streets to the home of Dr. Ibrahim, the Jewish physician, Khadija said to her husband,
We must say he is our sick child, struck down with smallpox. The doctor's handmaid will not look too closely at such a patient.
Mustafa knocked urgently on the door, and when a slave girl answered, he spoke urgently.
We have brought our child who has been struck with a terrible illness. We fear it is smallpox. Please, fetch your master at once. Here is a 1/4 dinar for his trouble.
He pressed the coin into her hand. The girl, seeing what appeared to be a sick person wrapped in a cloak, and hearing the word smallpox, quickly took the money and hurried upstairs to wake her master.
There is a man and woman below with a child sick of smallpox.
She told him.
They beg you to come down and examine the patient.
Meanwhile, not waiting for the doctor, Mustafa and Khadija carried the hunchback inside and propped him up against the wall at the top of a staircase that led to the doctor's study below. Then they slipped out into the night and hurried away. When Dr. Ibrahim came down with his lamp, still half asleep and dressed only in his nightclothes, he did not see the figure propped against the wall in the darkness. He stumbled over the body, and the hunchback fell heavily down the steep staircase, tumbling to the bottom with a terrible crash.
Allah preserve us.
The doctor cried out in horror. He rushed down the stairs with his lamp held high and knelt beside the motionless form. When he checked for signs of life, he found none. The man was clearly dead, and from the position of his body and the severity of his apparent injuries, it appeared that the fall down the stairs had been the cause of death.
This is terrible.
The doctor moaned, wringing his hands in despair.
This poor man has died from the injuries he sustained falling down my stairs. Even though it was an accident, when people learn that he died in my house, they will say that my medical incompetence was responsible for his death.
As a member of the Jewish community in a predominantly Muslim city, Dr. Ibrahim was especially conscious of how any scandal might reflect not just on himself, but on his entire people. He knew that some residents were always looking for reasons to stir up religious tensions, and the death of a beloved entertainer in a Jewish doctor's house could provide exactly the kind of incident they might exploit.
I must find a way to remove this body from my house,
The doctor decided.
and place it somewhere that will not implicate me in his death.
After much thought, he conceived a plan that seemed to offer a solution to his dilemma. Late that night, Dr. Ibrahim and his wife carried the hunchback's body up to their terrace roof. Their neighbor was Yusuf the Reeve, the controller of the Sultan's kitchen, a Muslim man whose house adjoined theirs. The doctor and his wife carefully lowered the body through the wind shaft that opened into the Reeve's house, propping it up against the wall below. Under cover of darkness, they completed their terrible deed and hurried back to their own quarters, hoping their involvement would never be discovered. When Yusuf the Reeve returned home from a late evening at the Sultan's palace, he carried a lighted candle and went to check his storeroom. There, standing in the corner beneath the wind shaft, he discovered the figure of a man.
By Allah!
He exclaimed,
So it is a man who has been stealing my provisions. I thought it was cats and dogs, and I have been killing the neighborhood animals unjustly, when all along it was this thief coming down through the wind shaft.
In his rage, Yusuf snatched up a heavy hammer and struck the figure full on the breast. The hunchback fell to the ground, and when the Reeve examined him more closely, he realized the man was dead. To his horror, he recognized him as the beloved entertainer Abu Hassan.
There is no majesty and no might save in Allah.
Yusuf cried out in horror.
Was it not enough that he was a hunchback, but he must also be a thief? O Veiler, deign to veil me with your curtain of concealment.
Desperate to avoid blame for the death, Yusuf decided he must move the body. He took the hunchback upon his shoulders and, going forth in the latter end of the night, carried him to the nearest bazaar. There he set the body up on its feet against the wall of a shop at the head of a dark lane, then hurried away into the shadows. Not long after, a Christian broker named Nicholas came stumbling along the street. He had been drinking wine late into the night and was now making his way toward the public bath. In his drunken state, he lurched through the darkness until he drew near the hunchback. Needing to relieve himself, he squatted down near the wall. As Nicholas glanced around, he suddenly noticed a man standing against the wall beside him. Earlier that very night, someone had snatched his turban from his head, and now, seeing this figure in the darkness, he assumed the fellow meant to steal what remained of his possessions.
Thief!
Nicholas cried out. He clenched his fist and struck the hunchback on the neck with all his drunken might. The body fell to the ground, and the Christian, thinking he had merely knocked the man down, began throttling and beating the corpse in his rage. Presently the night watchman of the bazaar came running and found a Christian kneeling on a Muslim and beating him.
What harm has this one done?
The watchman demanded.
The fellow tried to steal my turban.
Nicholas replied, still unaware that the man was already dead.
Get up from him.
The watchman ordered. When Nicholas stood, the watchman examined the body and discovered it was lifeless.
By Allah! A Christian has killed a Muslim!
The watchman seized Nicholas and, binding his hands behind his back, hauled him off to the governor's house. The Christian, as his drunkenness began to fade, realized with growing horror what had happened.
O Messiah! O Virgin!
He moaned.
How did I kill this fellow with a single blow? And in what haste he must have been to depart this life.
The broker and the body were kept at the governor's palace until morning. When the governor arose, he gave orders to hang the murderer and commanded the executioner to make proclamation of the sentence throughout the city. A gallows was erected in the public square, and Nicholas was made to stand beneath it. The executioner threw the rope around his neck, passed one end through the pulley, and was about to hoist him up when suddenly a voice rang out from the crowd.
Hold! Hold!
Yusuf the Reeve pushed through the crowd, shouting to the executioner.
I am he who killed the hunchback.
The governor asked,
What made you kill him?
I came home last night
Yusuf explained.
and found this man in my house. He had come down through the wind shaft to steal my property. In my anger, I struck him with a hammer on the breast, and he died forthright. Then I carried him to the bazaar and propped him against the wall. Is it not enough that I have killed a Muslim without also allowing a Christian to die for my deed? Hang me instead.
When the governor heard these words, he ordered the executioner to release Nicholas and prepare to hang the Reeve instead. The rope was removed from the Christian's neck and placed around Yusuf's, and the executioner was about to string him up when another voice rang out.
Hold! Hold!
Dr. Ibrahim, the Jewish physician, pushed through the throng.
It was I and none else who killed the hunchback.
The governor turned to him.
How so? Last night,
The doctor explained.
a man and woman came to my door saying they had a child sick with smallpox. They gave my handmaid a quarter dinar and asked her to fetch me. While she went to wake me, they brought him into the house and propped him against the wall at the top of the stairs, then fled. When I came down in the darkness, I stumbled over him, and he fell to the foot of the staircase and died. Then my wife and I carried him to the roof and lowered him through the wind shaft into the Reeve's house, which adjoins mine. When the Reeve came home and found him, he thought the hunchback was a thief and struck him. But the man was already dead from his fall in my house. Is it not enough to have killed one Muslim unwittingly, without allowing another Muslim to die wittingly? Release the Reeve and hang the Jew.
The governor commanded. The executioner took Dr. Ibrahim and slung the cord around his neck, but before he could complete the execution, yet another voice called out.
Hold! Hold!
Mustafa the tailor pushed through the people.
It was I and none else who killed the hunchback, and this is how it happened.
The crowd pressed forward eagerly to hear this latest confession.
I had been out enjoying myself yesterday,
Mustafa explained.
and when I returned home for supper, I met this hunchback who was full of good cheer and entertaining us with songs. I invited him to my house and bought fried fish for our meal. We sat down to eat, and my wife, in her merriment, took a large piece of fish and stuffed it into his mouth, saying, "By Allah, you must swallow it whole." But a bone stuck in his gullet, and he died on the instant. Fearing we would be blamed, we wrapped him in a cloak and carried him to the Jew's house, saying he was our sick child struck with smallpox. The slave girl came down, and I gave her a quarter dinar, telling her to fetch her master. While she went up, we carried the hunchback inside and propped him against the wall at the top of the stairs, then fled. When the Jew came down in the darkness, he stumbled over him and the body fell down the stairs.
The governor shook his head in amazement.
Release the Jew and hang the tailor on his own confession.
The executioner took Mustafa, removed the rope from the doctor's neck, and placed it around the tailor's.
I am weary of this.
The executioner complained.
We bring out one and change him for another, and no one is hanged after all.
But now the crowd was buzzing with excitement, for word had reached the Sultan of China that his favorite jester, the Hunchback, was dead and that 4 men were competing to confess to his murder. The Sultan immediately sent his chamberlain to the place of execution with orders to bring all 4 men before him, along with the body. The chamberlain arrived just as the executioner was about to hang Mustafa.
Hold! Hold!
He commanded.
The Sultan requires the presence of all these men.
So the tailor, the Jew, the Reeve, and the Christian broker were brought before the Sultan of China, with the hunchback's body borne on men's shoulders. When the Sultan heard the complete tale from beginning to end, he marveled greatly and was moved to mirth.
This is indeed a wonder of wonders.
The Sultan declared.
Let this story be written in letters of gold.
Then he turned to those assembled.
Did you ever hear a tale more marvelous than that of my hunchback?
But before anyone could answer, an old man pushed forward from among the crowd of onlookers. He was a barber An ancient fellow past his 90th year, with a long white beard and a sharp, clever face. A common man who had spent his life cutting hair and listening to the stories of others.
"O king of the age,"
said the barber with a deep bow.
"if you seek a tale more marvelous than that of your hunchback, I can tell you of my 6 brothers. Each of them met with strange fortune in this world. Their tales are filled with folly and wisdom, with laughter and tears, and they shall show you that wonder abounds in the lives of common folk, as well as in the courts of kings."
The Sultan, intrigued by this bold claim, gestured for the barber to continue. And so the old barber began to speak, settling into the rhythm of a born storyteller. He told of his first brother, who mistook air for substance and lost everything chasing illusions. He spoke of his second brother and his third, each tale more elaborate and amusing than the last.
The barber's tales of his 6 brothers. Each brother's story, a comedy of errors and human folly, can be found in the linked story, The Story of the Barber's 6 Brothers.
As the barber finished his lengthy tales, the court had laughed and marveled at the foolishness and misfortunes he described. But then, glancing at the hunchback's body lying nearby, the barber suddenly paused mid-gesture.
"But wait! With your permission, O king, I would examine the body of this hunchback, for something strikes me as curious."
The Sultan gestured his consent, and the barber knelt beside the corpse. He took the hunchback's head in his lap, looked at his face carefully, and suddenly burst out laughing.
"By Allah, I swear by your beneficence that there is still life in this man."
The entire court gasped in astonishment as the barber pulled out his barber's kit from his waist belt. He took out a pot of ointment and rubbed it on the hunchback's neck and throat. Then he produced a pair of iron tweezers and, inserting them carefully into the hunchback's throat, drew out the piece of fish with its bones still attached. When it came forth, it was soaked in blood. Immediately, the hunchback sneezed a tremendous sneeze and sat up as if nothing had happened. He passed his hand over his face and cried out,
"I testify that there is no God but God, and I testify that Muhammad is the apostle of God."
At this sight, everyone present marveled greatly. The Sultan laughed until he nearly fainted, as did all the others in the court.
"By Allah,"
exclaimed the Sultan when he recovered his composure,
"this is the most marvelous thing I have ever witnessed. O Muslims, did you ever in all your lives see a man die and be brought back to life? Verily, had Allah not vouchsafed him this barber, he would have been a dead man."
The entire assembly agreed that this was indeed a marvel of marvels. The Sultan then bestowed costly robes of honor upon the Jew, the Christian, and the Reeve, and bade them depart in all esteem. He gave the tailor a sumptuous robe and appointed him as his own personal tailor with generous pay. He made peace between the tailor and the hunchback, giving the entertainer also a splendid suit and a handsome stipend. As for the barber, the Sultan was so impressed by his wisdom, his entertaining tales, and his life-saving skill that he gave him a rich gift and a robe of honor, settled upon him a handsome salary, and made him barber surgeon of state and one of his companions. The Sultan's generosity extended even to those who had tried to deceive and shift blame onto others. Though the tailor, the Jew, the Reeve, and the Christian had each attempted to avoid responsibility through deception, the Sultan recognized that their actions came not from malice, but from fear, the very human fear of being blamed for a tragedy that was, at its heart, merely an unfortunate accident. Each man had ultimately been willing to sacrifice himself rather than let another die in his place, showing that beneath their panic and deception lay a fundamental sense of justice and humanity. The Sultan understood that true wisdom lies not in harsh punishment for frightened mistakes, but in mercy that encourages honesty in the future. And so they all lived together in perfect harmony and contentment, until there came to them the destroyer of all delights and the sunderer of all societies. Yet their story remained, told and retold through the ages, as a reminder that the most wondrous marvels can occur when least expected, and that what seems like tragedy may yet have a joyful ending.